Welcome back to the Heater Dynasty podcast. I'm your host, Eric Heater, your one-stop shop for all your fantasy football needs. And today is the second installment in my projection series where I'm showcasing this Google Sheets template that I've created that allows you to project out stats very easily for all 32 NFL teams and their fantasy relevant players. That is, unless you're talking about kickers and defenses, which, no, we're not doing that. So, and you shouldn't either. But all joking aside, this tool is awesome. I've been working on it all off season and is available to you if you want it as well. You can access it on my Instagram. You can follow me there, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And then you'll see at the top that I have a link for my Patreon or my Etsy site where you can purchase that spreadsheet. And while you're there, check out my website as well. I've been working really hard on it this off season. Would love some feedback from you all on what you think looks great and things that need improvement or other stuff that you'd like to see. And I will do my best to oblige. But without further ado, let's jump in. Today we are focusing in on the NFC East. Last week we talked about the AFC East, and we kind of decided that the AFC East is not going to be super exciting when it comes to fantasy relevance. However, I think there will be some fun football to watch. And then, of course, the NFL always has to throw little curveballs at me. I already recorded the episode, and then the Jonnu Smith trade came. So, obviously, some of the things we talked about are going to be different. I do think Miami's offense is going to look a little different, and I do think that it's sneaky good for Tyreek, Waddle, and Devon Achane, as well as Tua. With Jonnu gone, I do think that the target share is going to get a little bit more concentrated, and then all those players will be a little bit more relevant. But yeah, go back, check out that episode if you haven't had a chance to listen to it. But more importantly, today is the NFC East. I think it's going to be a lot more exciting, a lot more fantasy relevant players to talk about. And we'll start with just kind of breaking down the NFC East as a whole. So I do think that we have a couple powerhouse quarterbacks to talk about here. Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts. I had them as my QB2 and QB3 overall for the NFL. And then Dak Prescott in a Superflex league is also going to be relevant. I think I have him as a QB20, which is a little bit under consensus. But I do think that the Cowboys aren't going to be as great this year. And before I get too far along, I'll have to let you know, I do have a bias here. I've grown up a Commanders fan for a long time, but I'm going to try to put that aside. I'm not going to let that affect my my decision making here today or my projections. And I mean, I do have the Eagles ranked ahead of the Commanders for what it's worth, begrudgingly. But I think we can all agree that the Cowboys and the Giants suck. Okay. So, anyway, moving on. Let's talk about running backs. I do think that there is a lot of ambiguity in the backfields in the NFC East, which is going to muddy up the projections a little bit. Saquon is not an example of that. I think he's going to still be a workhorse. I have him as an RB4 for the whole season. And then Brian Robinson Jr. I have him, even though that backfield's a little muddy, I still have him as an RB19 because he sneakily gets it done. Even though nobody gives him credit, he's always constantly disrespected, and but he performs. And I have both Tyron Tracy and Cam Skattebo as hopefully fantasy relevant players this year. I do have Tyron Tracy getting the majority of the work this time around. But just because Cam's a rookie, but I do see Cam kind of getting that second half surge. So fantasy wise, he might be a nice late round pickup or someone that you can pick up off the waiver wire that will help you if you are making a hopeful playoff run. Javonte, he's on the Cowboys. I don't think it's going to be great, but I mean, they've got to give the ball to someone. So I have him ranked as an RB3, back end RB3 as RB34. And then I think Austin Eckler is still going to have a little bit of relevance as well. Possible sleeper might be Will Shipley because I do think they're going to lighten Saquon's workload just a little bit because he's getting older and they don't want to run him into the ground. They want to continue their playoff run, and it's a team that is obviously going to be making the case that could win the championship or the Super Bowl again. So if we go to the wide receiver, we see CeeDee Lamb at the very top, mostly because who else is he going to throw it to? Now that they have George Pickens, I do think that makes Cowboys offense a little bit more dangerous. But yeah, CeeDee Lamb is the wide receiver 2 overall. Malik Neighbors, wide receiver 5 overall. Once again, who else are the Giants going to throw to? And then Terry McLaurin. He is also in the top 12 in my projections. I have him at wide receiver 11. I know a lot of people are down on him this year. They think he's getting old. The contract extension looming. The 13 receiving touchdowns last year. How could he possibly do that again? Yada, yada, yada. I mean, but they're also, you have to take into consideration Jaden Daniels. There is no one else who has thrown him the football in all of Terry's career that compares to Jaden. And is Jaden going to take a sophomore slump this year? Maybe, but even a sophomore slump is going to be better than what he's had. So, yeah. So we'll break that down a little bit more when we get into each individual team. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, I think are both solid wide receiver 2 options. And then George Pickens, Deebo Samuel, you got some wide receiver 3s as well. So like I said, there's a lot more fantasy relevant players to talk about today. So I'm going to have to make sure I really focus in so that we don't make this a ridiculously long episode. But one area where we can cut is when we talk about tight ends, because I don't think the tight ends in this division are going to be fantasy relevant, at least not this year. And it breaks my heart to say that because I'd love to see Ben Sinnott break out this year, but I don't think it's going to happen outside of a Zach Ertz injury until maybe next year. But Jake Ferguson, yeah, I think he'll be decent. I don't think he's going to be great. Zach Ertz, I think will be a little less relevant than he was last year. I think he's just getting old. I think he'll be great for the Commanders' actual team, but fantasy-wise, I don't see you starting him. Same with Dallas Goedert. I don't think that they're going to be viable starting tight ends. But I could be wrong. It's happened before. So let's go ahead and get started with Dallas. When we look at Dallas's numbers, let's actually just go to their page. There we go. I have Dallas projected at 625 passing attempts, 450 rushing attempts for a total of 1,075 total plays ran on the season. So a little bit faster paced offense. I do think that they're going to be pass heavy because their running back room is older than me. So yeah, I don't see that being their strength this year. And they also just brought in George Pickens alongside of CeeDee Lamb. So when I'm breaking down the carry split for them, Dak Prescott, I guess I gave him a little bit more than I meant to. Let's see here. So I'm going to bump him down because I don't think he's going to run as much. 6.5%. So how much do I need to give? 1.5? We'll just give it all to Miles Sanders here. As you can see, I have them kind of just having a 3-headed running back room. So Javonte leading barely at 35%, Miles Sanders at 32%, Jaden Blue at 20%. I could see Jaden Blue surpassing Miles Sanders on the depth chart, and then I would just flip those numbers. I'd have him at 32% and Miles Sanders at 20% because like I said, I don't think any of them are world record breakers. I don't think they're that great. I think it's they're all about the same. So CeeDee Lamb, I have him at 2.5%, just a couple of end arounds and different things that they give him throughout the season. But I think the thing that we really want to focus on today is more the target share. I do think that there will be a bunch of dump off passes. Dak Prescott has been key to doing that recently. Now that he's getting a little older and he can't scramble as well, also with his injuries, he's more prone to just getting the ball out of his hands, protecting himself a little bit better. So Javonte 8%, Miles Sanders 6%, Jaden Blue 3%. Once again, very muddled. Maybe we'll get more news in the offseason and I'll adjust this. But as of right now, this is kind of where I have it. There's really only two main targets in this offense. I see it as CeeDee Lamb at the top. He's got 25.5% of the target share. And then George Pickens, I think he comes right in and takes a total 16% of the target share. Jalen Tolbert, I think he gets 7%. I think he got more last year than they wanted to give him. And it didn't really result in production. It just was him on the field running routes. And Jonathan Mingo, who they traded for, I don't think they won't say it, but I don't think they were very happy with that, with his results. I think he's a little bit ahead of Jalen Tolbert. I think they gave him 9%, but nothing crazy. And then Jake Ferguson, I give him an 11% target share. I think that's kind of average of what he's done. Nothing too crazy. So when I go down and you look at these stats, what that looks like, you'll notice Dak Prescott, I have him only expected to play 16 games. That's really because of he's getting older and the injuries that have been happening. And you look at his last 4 seasons, only one of them did he manage to even play all 17 games. So they have Joe Milton as their backup. That gives him 1 automatically. So if you haven't watched the tutorial or know how this works, these yellow boxes over here allow me to override the algorithms that are in place here. So that's why I put him at 16. If I take this away, I think it gives him 13, and that just seems way too low. So game of 16, and then that automatically gives the extra 1 to Joe Milton here. So when we get to Javonte, I'm just looking through, making sure all this looks accurate, making sure I didn't make any mistakes here. Javonte puts him at RB 34. I have him at 17 games played. I'm hopeful. We'll see what happens. Miles Sanders, I have him at 15 because, same thing. The 2022 is the last time that he actually finished a whole season. He's always missing games. He's getting older. He's got some injury concerns. We'll see what happens. Jaden Blue is the rookie that they just drafted this year. So hopefully he works out for them. I have him at 17 games played because, I'm an optimist. What can I say? All right, so let's get into the wide receivers here. I think that will be more interesting to talk about. George Pickens. I have him as a wide receiver 35 or a back end RB or RB, back end wide receiver 3. So he would definitely make your starting roster. And I think he is. I think he's going to have a good season there if they can control him. If he has some of his attitude issues, or if targets don't come his way right away, I do see some possible antics popping up, and we'll see how well Cowboys have handled that. Jerry Jones doesn't always tend to do well with these kind of circumstances. I don't see. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Whenever Mike Tomlin lets go of somebody, it tends to be a disaster for the next team. So, like I said, as a Commanders fan, you love to see it. But Jalen Tolbert. So I guess sticking on George Pickens, as long as he can produce on the field and stay on the field, he will produce this year. He's a good player. He's a little crazy. Jalen Tolbert, we already talked about that. I don't really think he's going to be that fantasy relevant. The only other fantasy relevant player on their wide receiver crew, I think, is CeeDee Lamb. I know it's CeeDee Lamb. He's going to be the wide receiver 2. He is a stud. I don't see any reason for, outside of injury, for that to change. So, yeah, draft him if you can. If you can't, it is what it is. The only other person I'd really want to mention in their their receiving core that I think is sneaky and interesting, and like more as a very like a dynasty pickup or something like that would be Kavonte Turpin. Um, just because of the special teams aspect of his game. And last year, they just seem to keep getting him on the field more and more. I know he's not young. I think he's like 30 years old. So he's not. He's like he's not going to be a long term thing. But I think that he could be a spot start here and there, or a flex worthy play on some weeks, depending on other injury concerns. And if you're definitely in a PPR league, I do think that it is something that could be useful to you. Jake Ferguson, like I said, I just don't see him as a fantasy worthy starter. Maybe as a flex option or your backup if you need it, but I just don't think he's going to be producing that much on the year. So moving on to the Giants. The Giants are definitely the worst team in this division. And I think even despite that, I think they're going to have some fantasy-worthy players. I think the Giants are good to be able to showcase a little bit different things of this document as well. For instance, they just drafted Jackson Dart as their rookie, but you'll notice in this document I only have a QB1 and a QB2 listed, and those are automatically updated based on our lads depth charts, so it'll automatically populate once those depth charts change on their website. But as of right now, it's the offseason, and you got Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. So I could go in there and manually change his name to Jackson Dart for Jameis Winston for the backup role, which I think is ultimately what's going to end up happening. But that would kind of mess up all the algorithms. So in my mind, I'm thinking when I see Jameis Winston there, it's Jackson Dart, just as a kind of a clarification on what's going on here. So there are a little bit of limitations to this document, but that's just so that I don't have to go through and update manually every single time a roster changes. And I think that outweighs this for sure. So once we get closer to the season, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Jackson Dart in that spot, QB2 spot, not Jameis Winston. So all that aside, passing attempts projections, I have them at 600. I have rushing attempts at 425, giving them a total plays ran at 1,025. I have Tyrone Tracy at a 42% carry split, Cam Scattaboo at a 32%. Here's another example like of what I was saying. They have him as the RB3. I think he's definitely their RB2. I just think we haven't gotten a training camp yet, so we haven't seen that yet. But come training camp, Devin Singletary is going to get moved out of that RB2 spot and switch places with Cam. That's why I gave Cam 32%, whereas Devin only has 8%. Malik, same kind of thing as what I gave CD, gave him some end arounds, all that good stuff. He gets 1%. Let's see here. So Malik Neighbors is the one stud that they have in the receiving core. I gave him 29% of the target share, which is absolutely a crazy number, but is what he did last year. And I don't see that changing because who else are they going to throw it to? Darius Slayton is going to have 12%. Wan'Dale Robinson is going to have 18%. Just because, once again, who else are they going to throw it to? And you look down here at the tight ends, I don't see them playing a big role of any kind. They use them more in their blocking scheme for rushing, but not really heavily used in the passing game. So if we come down here, I think Russell Wilson will be their starter for this start of the season, but I don't see him playing the whole season. He's gotten old real fast, and his production has gone down tremendously. So I have him playing 12 games, and like I said, it says Jameis there, but if you can just mentally picture Jackson Dart, I think Jackson Dart will get to finish out the season. Barring injury, maybe he'll get in earlier than that, but I give him about five games or so. So neither one really fantasy relevant, unless you're playing in some weird league with like 4 QBs or something. Tyrone Tracy, and I have him as the wide receiver, running back 24. And I think people are kind of down on him this year because of the drafting of Cam Scatterboo, but I do think it's going to be a two-headed running back room. I have him at Tyrone at running back 24, and I have Cam Scatterboo as running back 40 because I don't really see him getting going until the back half of the year. And then for Dynasty, yeah, I'd be a little bit worried about Tyrone Tracy because I do think this will be Cam Scatterboo's backfield as of next year, but not necessarily until next year. Malik, wide receiver 5. I think he's a stud, and hopefully he can stay on the field. Last year they literally threw everything at him, and his poor body couldn't handle it. So hopefully he's bulked up a little bit, and maybe they'll spread the ball around a little bit more. Darius Slayton's one of those names that just won't go away, and I think he is a solid pickup for as a flex-worthy play and a good depth piece, whether in redraft or dynasty. And unfortunately, so is Wandale. He's great for PPR leagues because he gets so many targets, but he doesn't really do anything with them. So he's a very frustrating player, but will help you pad your stats if you need him. And yeah, I think that's it for the Giants. Let's get on to the two main ones that we really want to talk about. So the Eagles just won the Super Bowl. They brought back most of their offense. Their defense is really the only thing that got changed, which I think will be a benefit for fantasy because I don't think their defense is going to be as strong this upcoming season. So they're going to have to throw the ball more. They're going to have to actually play more competitive games. They were just walking all over everybody last year. I think this year it'll be a little bit more back and forth. So I have them as a pretty much 50-50 split between their passing attempts and the rushing attempts. Total plays at 1,050 for the year. Jalen Hurts is a stud. He's going to continue to be a stud. He gets 27% of the carry split. I'm giving Saquon 54% of the carry split. And then Will Shipley, I'm giving him 12%. I do think that they are going to continue to give him a huge workload, Saquon that is. But I do think that they are going to gradually work Will Shipley in just to give him a little bit of rest so that they can make another deep push in the playoffs. And target share, I see Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown getting the majority of the work. Dallas Goedert will get 13%, Devontae 20%, and then A.J. Brown 24%. And then Saquon, I actually expect them to give him a little bit more in the receiving game because, like I said, I think they're going to be playing from behind more frequently than they were last year because their defense is not going to be able to just manhandle teams the same way. But what does that look like for actual numbers? Jalen Hurts is the QB3, and I think that's pretty accurate. I have him throwing more passing touchdowns this year. Last year was 18. This year I have him projected at 25, which I think is still within his range. That'll be the most he's thrown in the last 4 years, but only by 1 or 2. But I still have him rushing for 13 touchdowns since we still got to deal with the stupid tush push. Saquon, I have him as the RB4. I think he's going to be solid. I don't think he's going to be the RB1 again. I think that's hard to reproduce. I have him at 12 rushing touchdowns, 2 receiving touchdowns, and I think he's going to be. I don't think he's going to slow down this year. Will Shipley, I have him. I don't think he's going to be that fantasy relevant, but would be a good handcuff just in case Saquon does get hurt. If he gets hurt, then yeah, Will Shipley's going to have a great year. I think the wide receivers are interesting. I do think Jahan Dotson is not fantasy relevant at all, though if someone got injured, maybe. I just don't think he's that good. A.J. Brown, he is outside the top 12, but he is a really good, solid wide receiver 2 at wide receiver 15. Devontae Smith, I have him projected as the wide receiver 24. And I could also see a situation where he gets more than than AJ Brown, that he ends up being the better fantasy option, just because of the way the offense works. But right now, I have AJ Brown projected a little bit higher. And then the only last name I'd really mention would be Dallas Goedert. Once again, not really fantasy relevant anymore. Great for their offense, and he'll have a couple spike games here and there, but not someone that I would want to start as my tight end. All right. Last but not least, the Washington Commanders. I think people are down on the Commanders because of what happened to CJ Stroud in his sophomore year, and they think there is no way Jaden Daniels can do it again. Well, I think that they didn't even reach his ceiling last year. I think we will see better production from Jaden Daniels on the field, but I think we'll see less um, wins, if that makes sense. I think they'll still make the playoffs, but I think last year was they had a lot of luck that came their way and a lot of fortunate situations. So I don't think the schedule is going to be harder this year. I don't think they're going to be able to pull off the same going to the championship game that they did last year. But I don't think that fantasy wise, that means it's going to be worse. I think we'll see more. So Jaden, I have him at 27% of the carry split. I'm giving Brian Robinson 42%. I think he's going to return to his average. He missed a couple games last year. That's why he was down at 35%. But I think if he's healthy, he'll be their main person. Austin Eckler, I think if he's healthy, he'll get 17%. And then the other ones will just be in there to fill. So Jeremy McNichols and JCM, I think they will both help the team, but I don't think they're going to be fantasy relevant. When it comes to target share, Deebo Samuel, I'm giving him 16% of the target share. I think he comes in. I think he's a solid wide receiver 2 for them. I really do. Wide receiver 2 for the Commanders. I think he'll be a wide receiver 3 when it comes to actual fantasy production. Terry, I'm giving him 23%. I don't see he's playing this year. They're going to work out the contract. It's going to be fine. You just wait and see. And then the other person would be Zach Ertz at 14%. And then the running backs will each kind of split the work at 6.5% for Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler at 8%. So what does that mean? Well, that puts Jaden Daniels as the QB2. I have him thrown for 30 passing touchdowns this year and rushing for 6. I have him throwing for over 4,000 yards. I think, but nothing crazy. But I think he's going to be successful this year. I don't see him regressing. Brian Robinson, I have him as the RB19. That's with 11 rushing touchdowns, 2 receiving touchdowns, and 221 rushing attempts. Austin Eckler, I think, is going to be a solid flex-worthy play for your teams. I see him playing all 17 games this year, and he will get not as many rushing attempts, but I think he will be more active in the receiving game and playing more third down role. Terry, I think he's going to do it again, guys. I really do. I'm excited to say that I think he's the real deal, and he finally has a good quarterback to throw to him. Noah Brown, I think, is someone that could be really sneaky and someone that I hope is not hurt too bad. There's something that happened in camp. We don't really know. They've been very quiet about it. But if he can play, I think he will be a solid wide receiver 3 option for this team and could give you a couple flex weeks if anyone else is out. And then Deebo coming over. I know everyone thinks he's fat. I still don't think we'd be able to stop him. I don't think NFL teams will be able to either. I think he's motivated. He wants a contract. I think he's going to do well. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I really got. Like I said, Zach Ertz, I don't think he's fantasy worthy this year. I really wish Ben Sinnott would. If Zach Ertz gets hurt, then pick up Ben Sinnott because he is going to play a huge role. You just wait and see. But unfortunately, I don't think we get to see that until next year. But yeah, that kind of wraps up the NFC East. Once again, I'm enjoying doing these. If there's something you want to hear more about or anything like that, feel free to give me comments and feedback. You can do it on Spotify. You can do it on YouTube. You can do it on my website for that matter, or send me a DM on Instagram. I don't care. I'm just one guy, so I will reach out as soon as I can. But would love to hear from you all. What you'd like to see, what you'd like to hear. But yeah, until next time. See you later.